Our world continues to change and push us in ways we have not been challenged before. On this show, we talk about these challenges, how to be aware of them, face them, and overcome them in your life. This is David Waldas, creator of the Aligned Living System.
And I'm Nick Musica, Aligned Living Coach. Welcome to the Aligned Living System podcast.
Welcome to the Aligned Living System podcast. This is David Waldas here with Nick Musica. Today's topic is when it feels like shit's against us, or maybe when shit is against us. Not like literally against us, but when it feels like shit in the world is against us. I feel like I have to say these things because Nick's here with this look on his face, like picturing shit against him.
How did I get blamed?
Because you think so loud, man. Hey, tell me that's not what you were thinking.
No, I can't truthfully say that. But
So anyways, when it feels like things are trying to stop you from what you're doing is the topic. Is that better, Nick? Can you handle that?
yeah, I'll go along with that one.
I'm not insulting you. It's not like your humor is any higher than mine. It was just the disruptive nature of it.
Yeah, no, I'm good for a potty joke, and so let's keep this
Nice.
let's keep it going. Yeah.
So yeah, let's dive right in then. So there's always themes, right? Themes in my life, themes in my clients' lives, and one of the things that's been showing up recently is this feeling of I'm trying to get ahead and I'm working on my purpose, and the universe keeps knocking stuff out of my hand when I'm about to have my breakthrough and I'm about to have stuff really go well for me. Something happens. And, it's really interesting talking to people that are in that situation, because there is this feeling of like, God, am I cursed? Like, what is going on? Like, is there like forces that are trying to stop this for me? And, the idea of where are we engaging from? And I mean, it's funny as I'm starting to open up with this topic, I'm realizing this can go a lot of places. It can open up a lot of rabbit holes for people. But there's something that happens when we are operating in our container that is full of old trauma, right? Which is downstream from the turds in the creek, if you've been around the Aligned Living lingo at all. But that place down there is just full of pitfalls. It's full of things we can step in, which will trigger some sort of an experience of things not working out in our life. And it can feel like there's a force trying to stop me. And that is the experience that happens when we're in trauma, when we are calling in resistance into our life. There literally is a force trying to stop us. And so we're not crazy. We're not, it's not about trying harder from that place. And that's the frustration that I hear often from people is like, I'm fully committed. I'm doing everything I can to make this happen. And it's still not happening. Still, there's resistance showing up, like the internet breaks, like stuff that's outside of my control keeps happening, like I'm cursed. And so, people that are having that experience are not crazy. That is what happens when we're operating downstream from our trauma, is that we are not choosing ourselves more than 50% is the way that we've been putting it. And so, what does that mean? And I'll get you in here in a second, Nick, to join in. But this idea of, when we're underneath our trauma, when we're downstream, we're out of that zone of miracles. We're in our stuff. We don't have the ability at that point to choose ourselves more than 50%. And the funny thing about that is if we were able to choose just 51%, it would push us back up to a place where we're in that zone of miracles, where we're in, above the threshold of our trauma, but trauma pulls us back down below that. And in that experience, we're not choosing us. We're choosing struggle. We're choosing something's wrong. We're choosing resistance. And no matter how committed we are, if we're in that place, we're not going to be able to win until we're able to pull ourselves into a higher consciousness or resolve the trauma that we're engaging with that results in us being in a higher consciousness. And so, welcome, Nick.
There was not one potty joke in there. I was paying attention. Just not one. Yeah, it's I'm with you. I'm with you a lot of the way on this, and then there's the shit just sort of happens sometimes. The internet goes out on everyone, right? There's
Mhm,
traffic for everyone, not just the
mhm.
people who need a reminder of slow down,
Yeah,
or you're in a, or whatever, however you interpret the traffic, right?
yeah, yeah.
Things always getting in my way, right?
Mhm.
Um, I bet if I were to go on the freeway here in San Diego at 5 o'clock, I would encounter some of it.
Yeah.
Um, and so it reminds me a little bit of like, when animals show up. So like sometimes there's an animal that just showed up,
Mhm.
and sometimes there's an animal that showed up for you,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
right? So to be able to, I think at least for me is like, what was your, where were you?
Mhm.
Where were you mentally, physically, vibrationally when that thing happened?
Yep, yep.
And then
That's a
there's
great point. Yeah.
an interpretation that can, assuming you're open to it, right? And even if it's not meant for you, it could still be, you can still find a reminder, right? Even if it wasn't.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes it's just pacing. Sometimes it's putting us in the right place at the right time. Maybe there's something else we need to resolve or somebody else that we're engaging with needs to resolve. And, you know, sometimes it is just living on this planet that there is congestion. As you're saying, that's a great point. And so, not everything, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, right? That Freud thing.
Right, right,
Um, and so really what we're talking about is, when we're on that edge of breakthrough, when we're doing the things and something happens, and repeatedly. And so there's probably something in your life that you've been trying to break through, and somehow, if you're, and this is a funny thing too, right? People that are just living their life and aren't chasing something, aren't really trying to show up and have that purpose, there's a lot less resistance, right? Because if we stay where we are, and just kind of coast along and move at the speed at which things are moving around us, we don't experience that same resistance. We may get really uncomfortable there
yeah,
and
that's
pushed
true.
into our purpose. But those of us that are going, man, I've got stuff to do here. I've got things to teach. I've got things to open up. I've got something to share. Like we go and go and go, and we move faster than the pace of other things around us. We're going to hit the resistance. We're going to hit our own roadblocks. We're going to hit our own experience of where we don't believe in ourselves. We're going to hit our old traumas. And so that congestion, like it's a great distinction you're making, Nick, because when we go after it, we get confronted with ourselves, and it often feels like getting confronted by things that are against us. And what I've found is the more we can hold ourselves in a higher space, upstream from those turds, upstream from, and if you're not familiar with that term, basically the turds are our traumas, they're our coping mechanisms. They're the things that when we're downstream from, the stream is just contaminated. It doesn't matter how clear we try to be, like they're affecting our thinking and they're affecting our energy, they're affecting what feels available to us and doesn't feel available to us. And so when we're upstream from that, is those are what the aligned living tools, is a big part of this, is having that clarity. um we move outside of the old container where it wasn't possible, and we move into a container where it is. And so often we go, God, I'm outside of the container, and then we realize, oh, I'm actually just in a lesser trauma or a more hidden trauma. And we find that resistance and we work through it, and maybe we confront these things inside of ourselves and work through those. And when we can move to that next level, now there's another level of freedom and another level of freedom. And so it's so, I hope this is something that people can wrap their heads around. It's not too far out there, but at the most basic level, it's saying, when I am trying to do something and there's a part of me that's not rooting for me, there's a part of me that's in struggle with this, that's like has more than the 50%, like I'm going to call in all kinds of experiences to keep it from happening. If I can get myself just to 51%, I'm actually going to vote for me over the resistance, and I'm going to find a way through it. And I think it is that simple. But what does that look like to actually do and experience from a real concrete perspective?
Yeah. Okay, I'm with you. Um, I mean, it seems like there's a piece of karma in there for me, right? Like the higher the individual vibration, the quicker the karma comes around, type of thing,
And I would
right?
say I don't call it karma anymore, too. Like I feel like karma is not really a thing because we like
Mm,
like it was, and I think we moved out of that, but our unhealed stuff is very much a thing. And so that, like, if we're master manifestors, which is what happens when we get at a higher frequency, we can manifest good things, but we can also, if there's
Yeah, right.
51% pointing against us, we're going to manifest that
Yeah, that's
block
right. That's right.
instantly. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I mean, I'm not going to completely throw karma out the window, um, personally. And there's also this. I mean, yeah, it feels
No,
like a
go
thing to
for it.
me.
We're allowed to have different perspectives.
Feels like a
Absolutely.
thing. Um, and there's a where'd it go? Train of thought. It just went missing. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So I mean, regardless of what we're doing, anytime during the day, um, there is we are actively manifesting
Hmm. Hmm.
everything
Yeah.
every time, with every breath, every word, all the things.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and so even if it's the situation that we find ourselves in, you go, I didn't manifest this, but you manifest your reaction to it. You manifest your emotions in it.
Hmm.
You can respond to it one way or the other, regardless of how severe it is.
And how big of a congestion ends up being for you.
That's right. That's
Mhm.
right.
How
Yeah.
derailing. Does this
Yeah.
end the project? Does this shut down the day? Or is this just going,
Yeah.
okay, that just happened. Hold my
Yeah.
alignment, hold my clarity, move forward.
Yeah. I picked up this traditional Chinese medicine book. It just seemed interesting to me, and it's interesting how the philosophy is like taking a look at the condition from these multiple perspectives, right? And then wrapping a bow sort of on it from the multiple perspectives. And this feels sort of like that. Like, are you
Mhm.
looking at it from the lens of my vibration right now? Well, I was fine in the car, right? Then the traffic hit.
Mhm.
Or is there a message in there in terms of what needs to show up for you right now? Or I
Yeah.
mean, there's different ways to take a look at it to really understand what is happening in the moment right now, and then choosing how do you want to respond to it, whatever that
Yeah.
may mean.
Yeah. And I think that that piece of choosing yourself at 51% minimum. And again, that's like these topics we're talking about can easily be misunderstood, I think, because it doesn't mean it always has to be my way. It means I have to root for myself. And rooting for myself doesn't necessarily mean getting my way. It doesn't mean things have to go exactly how I want them to or other people have to fold to me. It means I need to do what's right for me. And sometimes what's right for me is cooperation. Sometimes what's right for me is, somebody I care about putting their needs first because that's what's right for me. It's not keeping me off my purpose. It's really help, operating in this place that I know is the right engagement. And so, we're gonna add something, Nick. You look like you're about
Yeah,
to.
I was just playing the role of uh, there's an assumption there around I know what's right for me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? And so I'm in a position for a job.
Mm-hmm.
It's this one or that one, or maybe it's another one, and it's also in a different place, and I may have to move. Like, what is there could be something that's complicated, it's full of emotion, and there's you know it's meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those choices are maybe more meaningful than the others. And so,
Mm-hmm.
what is right for me? I don't know. I need a job,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so sometimes like that push through of like I need to have it this way or surrender to how it goes. Absolutely. And I think this is the part that makes this 51% concept a little bit challenging to wrap our head around is it's a little less action like how it shows up and more about how I feel inside myself. Like, is there a part of me that doesn't really isn't really behind me? Am I still working through some childhood trauma where I just can't fully root for myself? And
Mm-hmm.
and again, it doesn't have to be 100%, but it has to be more than 50%. Otherwise, we're manifesting something that's bigger than us that's stopping us from doing what we're trying to do. And all of our actions can say, well, look how hard I'm working. Of course I'm rooting for myself. But when we're rooting that hard, when we're pushing that hard, it doesn't mean we're rooting for ourselves. It means we're struggling. It means we're grinding.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get that. I, I live there sometimes. It's one of my gifts, as I say, David.
Yeah, that's great, man. It's really awesome.
Working through it, working on it.
And so, what does that look like though? So, we've talked about the idea of moving into a bigger container, right? Like that smaller
That's right.
container where we're not rooting. It's really about connecting more with our light, allowing more energy to move through, allowing ourselves to expand who we are and how we're showing up. And the moment we become small, the moment we shrink back, the moment we let less energy flow through us, we have less energy to overcome. And what are we overcoming? Well, it's ourself. And so when all these things manifest, these resistances, they're just us rooting for ourselves for less than 50%. Like
Mm.
that's and it's such an interesting exploration. I got that channel a couple weeks ago around the 51%, and it's been a really interesting exploration to go, if I'm really honest with myself right now, am I rooting for myself over 50%? Do I want to win this? And it's funny. I have a background in sports. I played soccer through college and was a high school varsity boys coach for a while, and um, love sports. And you see that in athletes, like where they don't expect, they're not going to win. Like and again, it's different because we're not trying to win in life, but sometimes they're not rooting for themselves at least 51%. Like they're letting somebody else go. Maybe they're, for some reason, there's something like they're just not sprinting full out, or they're not going full speed for the ball. I remember my daughter, she'll appreciate me telling this story. You know, she was like 5'9" in sixth grade. So it's like the class picture's hilarious. She was like, "Is that a teacher's aide? Like, who's that taller than the teacher?" Um, no, that was my daughter. And so she played basketball, and I remember her, like, every time she would move on the court, a little girl would go flying and she'd get called for a foul. So she started, having to be very timid. And one time she had the ball and like held it. And this little girl that came up maybe, to her chest, like comes up and grabs the ball and pulls it out of her hands. And it was like right in front of me on the, because I was sitting on the sidelines. And I'm like, hey, like, what just happened? And she was just like, it was the last time that happened though, because she was just like trying to be not full out, because every time she'd go full out, she'd get, the whistle would blow. And so she's like everything had to be kind of a softness to it, and that wasn't going to work. So it was like a really cool pivotal moment for her,
Mm.
having this little tiny girl rip the ball out of her hands, because that little tiny girl got encouraged to go full out. Um, she wasn't going to get a foul. She could have run full speed into my daughter and bounced off her, and maybe my daughter would have gotten called for the foul, right? Because that's just how it
Yeah.
worked because of perception. But it was really kind of a cool metaphor too, just for like, when are we just kind of going through the motion, kind of softening things rather than going, I'm 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 rooting for me.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so I'd love to hear from people too, because it's like, as this 51% things coming up more and more. I'm curious to hear how people receive it and what it's like for them to wrap their heads around, what does this look like tangibly in my life, and can I feel when I'm not really rooting for myself? Can I, and the difference between like pushing hard and thinking that's rooting for myself versus really wanting this to go well for me. Like when we said, and I think that's the question is, can I feel this thing inside me that really wants this to go well for me? Or am I kind of hedging my bets and going, this might not work? I don't,
That's true.
and I think that's a great way to feel it inside of ourselves. Am I going, God, I want this to work for me. I want this to come out really like exceptionally well. I want it to work for everybody, but I want this to be a real win for me. And do we feel that way? And if we don't, like, that's pretty interesting and something really worth exploring.
You still catch me off guard with your definitions of interesting and fun.
I find it fascinating whenever I find my messed up shit. I'm like, oh, I gotta get that figured out. That's fascinating that still exists in me.
Yeah.
And like all the layers. And then here's the
Yeah.
thing too: is people go, "Gosh, you've been at this so long. Why do you still have this stuff going up?" Because I keep expanding, right? And a lot of people, like, same thing we're talking about. If we bring ourselves to a certain level and go, okay, I'm good here, like a lot less resistance, a lot less things will come up, a lot more just kind of status quo. When we go, I got another level in me. I got another level in me. I can show up bigger. I can have a bigger impact. I can help more people. I can, express myself more. I can find another aspect of myself. And when we do that, it keeps showing up. And then, and I think some of us can get embarrassed about that and go, this shouldn't be showing up for me anymore. But I'm like, well, it absolutely should. And if it isn't showing up for you, maybe you're getting a little too complacent. Maybe you're not really taking yourself to that next level of expansion that's available, and so available now, right? Like there's just so much energy to support this.
So many opportunities in the world to inspire those
Yeah,
changes to dive into that energy.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
yeah, we'd love to hear how you're wrapping your head around this, because as we're talking about this, and when I get a channel, like I receive it at the same time too, and so I have my understanding of it, and I try to express it and put it into the words that want to come through me, and so it would be super helpful in to hear feedback and to hear, what does this mean for you? How do you receive what we're talking about today? So please comment, email us. Super curious, because this is all about dialing this in. How is this helpful, or how is it not helpful? What do you need for this to become helpful? So awesome.
Yeah. Nice. Great.
Yeah. Interesting conversation.
Hmm.
All right. Awesome, Nick. Well, thanks
Good
so
to
much
see
for
you.
listening, everyone. And would love to hear from you. So please give us some feedback. Let us know where you're at. All right. Have a great week. We hope you enjoyed listening to today's podcast. And if you did, please subscribe so you can catch the next episode. If you want to learn more about the Aligned Living System and how it could support you in your life, check out davidwaldas.com.